thank you everybody for dropping by, especially FrostVsYou. How do you want me to address you?
Frost is fine.
Frost. All right. I appreciate you making time to do this. I was like,
Always.
I reached out to you on Twitter because I was like, I was a huge fan of watching you guys play at Champs. I don't watch a lot of Pacific, but I think I need to this coming year. But yeah, seeing what you guys did against Leviathan, I was like, dude, these comps are nuts. And then obviously I heard a lot of the hype that was being put out about Primi and all that. So it's really, really cool to see you guys play. And I was a big fan of like pushing the meta, changing the game of, like that's what I've been pushing for in League. And it's nice to see, at least in Valorant, there are coaches doing some of this stuff. And it was really exciting to see. So thank you so much for making time to do this.
Anytime, bro.
All right. And also, I'm a big fan of your podcast as well. I'm a big fan of Baby Bay and what you guys are doing. Spike Talk's really entertaining. So thank you for putting out good content too.
No, don't thank me. Thanks, Steve and Baby Bay. They had to convince me to do it.
Really?
So, that thing almost didn't happen.
Damn. All right. Well, let's give us a little bit of background. Like, how'd you get started in esports? What's your history?
Oh shit. Huh. Okay. Started in Dota 2 as a player. This is around 2011.
Okay.
2012 was a 6-man for a team called Absolute Legends that was at TI2. Try to compete to make TI3. And then started Flipside pretty much shortly after with the team that I was playing on. And then, then after that, I think it was summer of 2014 at TI4. I think it was either TI3 or TI4. I think it was TI4 actually. I found out about stickers, in-game stuff coming. So we were like, oh man, maybe we got to get a Counter-Strike team because pendants had just come out in Dota 2. So that's how like that's how I started. Because the first game I got into as an esports like owner or like whatever was Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
And it was simply because my Dota connections, because I knew everyone, and I still know people at Valve. They had gave us like a hint at like, in-game cosmetics, but not just skins, like actual things for teams. So we were all intrigued by this. The pendants didn't work out very well. It wasn't very economical, and it didn't actually like help orgs as much as we assumed it would. But the next thing that they were going to do was like the CS:GO skins and stickers and stuff. And so we were like, yo, we got to get into that. And then when that happened, then, Rocket League, fighting games, Crossfire, everything else came after that. But that's pretty much
it took
how
me.
I got started.
I mean, I was shocked that Riot took this long to monetize teams. Like it's been.
Oh boy, yeah,
they could have been making so much money over the like 15 years that 14 years that professional League of Legends been around. Like, why did they never monetize that? Like, and so now what they're doing in Valorant is incredible. Like just making champs. Like I'm sure you guys saw a pretty good chunk of money come in just from doing that, which is really good because it incentivizes the competitive system. Like you're not going to sandbag when you can make champs. Like
I think, man. I promise you your crowd is not going to give a shit about this. So I don't really know if we should go too far into this, but the conversations I had with not really Gabe Newell, even though he was around, but Eric Johnson, who was VP at Valve for Dota. Bro, Pete, we were having conversations about, not only that, this was like 2012 TI2 after party. There was like a nightclub that they did the after party in.
Yeah.
And it's like Eric Johnson. There's like a bunch of Valve people that are celebrating like the success of TI2, which is still probably one of the more popular TIs because the finish was so good.
Yeah.
And even back then, bro, we were talking about, this stuff. We were even talking about like integrating, the ecosystem to like colleges and high schools and all that. So it's just like, I think developers back then, I don't think it was malice. I just think they most of them didn't know and like they didn't have the foresight.
That I mean,
Ru-
that's the
yeah,
perfect word, because if you think about all the problems in esports over the last 5 6 years, it's been a complete dismantling of like the investor money. And so if we didn't have an infrastructure built out when we had the opportunity to build it, this is the problem. Now you're playing catch up. You're trying to build ROI. You're trying to actually build like like a profit system, which should have been done when they had millions and millions of dollars of investor money. They could have built this whole thing out. You know.
yeah, but that's another conversation. I don't think your crowd's gonna care about. But
I talk
I'll
about this
just
stuff a
say
lot, actually.
this.
So I'm always
Yeah, I'll
like
just
the
say
business
this.
of
The
esports.
the big problem was, and flip side, like I got fucked by this because
Yeah,
I've never been charismatic enough, or I didn't have the right background for people to invest in me, but they pretty much always invested in my competitors. Um, when VC money came in, it ruined a lot, and it's not because the VCs ruined it per se. It's more just you have a lot of people that actually don't have like one, they're not fiscally responsible,
right.
so they've never had to be, right? Like if you think of most, like, and this is a conversation I will know much better than you.
Hmm.
When you look at my contemporaries that were owners, they were all either rich white guys or were foreigners that had some sort of money.
Right.
Like everyone kept talking like I love when I hear grassroots esports because like people don't even realize like that actually doesn't exist
No.
because those people always get jerked around by
Yeah.
the other people with money.
Well, they get
And they,
abused because they can build a
yeah,
fan base, but they have no funding.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So basically, what happened was when VC money came in, everything was about growth. So what I found out, which I thought was very interesting, is that not losing money was considered a bad thing. Like flip side, so like I did this like TED talk at UCLA. It was like 2018 or something.
Hmm.
You can find it on my Twitter. It's on the solo.to.
Yeah.
And it's at their data and esports conference. And I had to submit like tax returns for Flipside because in order to speak, like basically UCLA wants to make sure that if they're going to give you a platform and a place to speak about something that they want in their thing, it can't just be like, you know, fabricated nonsense, right?
Right. Right.
It has to have some sort of substance. So instead of having to like submit a white paper, basically, I was allowed to basically just like submit the proof of everything I'm right.
Yeah.
So I mean, it kind of like a white paper, but like a quasi white paper because it
You,
wasn't really
you
that
have a real
official.
org. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So well, but it's also because I'm not funny. I'm not sophisticated enough to be at UCLA. The thing is, esports was such a big thing that they basically made concessions. Because,
Mhm.
like, if you're trying to tell me I got 3 weeks to make a fucking white paper to do this presentation, I'm just not going to fucking do it. I don't got the time for this bullshit. So
Yeah.
that was
Academia.
pretty much what I said to Jay Tucker, who's the head of the. So at the time it was called the Center for Memes, but it's basically the business school.
Uh-huh.
So Jay Tucker, he came from Microsoft. He runs UCLA's basically their like their the entirety of the business school.
Yeah.
They do this thing every year, which is the Data and Insights conference at UCLA. So he heard about me from something else because they said data, and I was like the original Moneyball guy. And how that ties into the story is because I wasn't losing money. And
Mhm.
then, bro, this is like 2016, 2017, 2018, when everybody was all fighting for investors, including us. Bro, we were taking meetings with everybody. We weren't losing money.
That's
Like,
crazy.
even with the roster with Simple, Blade, Markelov, Flipside was
Hmm.
basically in the black.
That's
Like,
crazy.
we were nickel and diming everything, but we were in the black.
Right.
And that was held against us. Now, I don't have an MBA, but basically we weren't showing growth. Their whole logic was basically, or I mean, I don't have to explain this to you because you know how VCs work, but
Yeah.
they didn't see the return in us because we weren't showing the margins of growth that like other people were, but those other people were also spending and like, minus $1 million, $2 million, $3 million of spend a year. We're not. We're just not
See,
losing money,
the,
but
the
we're winning.
the problem is VCs are used to backing actual companies, where if you're doing that, you're spending that money on expansion. You're spending that money on actual
Right.
scalability. Esports orgs can't scale. What do you
Right.
need to
Well, so
sign like
that's the
3 more
thing.
teams? Like, what, it doesn't make
Right.
any
No, no.
sense.
It's perfect that you said that. Scalability was the number one problem with us
Yeah.
because, right? But what that did was now going back to my fiscally responsible argument. Now you have these morons
Right.
that are given millions and millions of dollars, and what do? They just did this.
Buy a team
And now you
house.
have salaries, bro. Bro, in Counter-Strike, right? So our team, so the reason why I went to Eastern Europe was because I couldn't go to North America. Even as a North American, it was way too expensive. And I was like, bro, y'all suck anyway. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up going with Blade, Markalot, instead of, the NA guys. Because at the time, the NA guys, believe it or not, I passed on the Hiko, Semphis, Sean Garrett's roster, right? Because I had a connection to Spencer. And I passed on it because the money was the same. Well, they wanted slightly more, which isn't that big of a deal. But Europeans in Counter-Strike were way better than North Americans at the time.
You're already at that point. Yeah.
So at that time, it just made more sense for me to do that. But if you look at all the flip sides teams, they're like non-American.
Right.
Like, Rocket League, Crossfire, everything. And the reason for that is just spend, because at home I was dealing with basically inflation.
Sure.
And to me, I'm just like, bro, there's no way you're paying this player X amount of money. And look, man, that's cool. I wasn't about to do that shit.
It's the same problem now, though, because cost of living here is so high.
It's worse now.
Yeah, you're talking about if you took the Sentinels roster, you could field the entire Pacific's region for that money. Like,
bro, G2 is the most expensive roster in all of Valorant.
It's insane.
I'm not trolling.
Yeah,
it's comical.
Yeah.
How much more expensive NAVCT is,
sure,
compared to Asia. And so basically, so when VCs came in, they started doing all this stuff. You've been around for the EG stuff, it's and the thing is, it's only gotten worse.
Yeah, I was on that team. I was part of the cuts.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like that is the 20, 30 years from now, when people are learning about esports and stuff, I guarantee you this stuff is all going to get left out because,
But I agree. It's the problem isn't just like, evil orgs, evil VCs. It's a mismatch, right? VCs are looking to build businesses. The orgs didn't know how to operate like businesses.
Well, but and yes.
So you have this mismatch. You got a bunch of kids, basically, people who've never actually owned a business. They're like, hey, you're going to give me how much money? And you want me to just spend it on whatever I think is good? Like, cool.
Right. and that to me is both my biggest regret by not playing the game better.
Yeah.
And then also, I think the unfortunate part of my life, which was simple, the way I grew up in the inner city. I grew up in the projects in New York City. I didn't come from money. I didn't know anyone in my network that had money to be like, yo, you want to get into esports? Here's an investment.
Right.
That shit wasn't a thing. So the way I was always taught was you run a business by basically you can't be in the negative.
Right.
No matter what you do,
it doesn't matter. Exactly.
You can't pay money out if you're not bringing something in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was my whole logic and philosophy at Flipside. And for me, that was actually held against me when it came to, bro, I could tell the Yankees, the Cowboys.
Out of curiosity, how did you
these guys?
How did you bring money in? Because that's been
sponsorship.
That's been an unsolved problem for a lot of orgs. Like, how do you get money in?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. This was 2015, right? 2014, 2015. So I had access to the people at CSGO Lounge because I knew the guys that made it. So what we ended up doing was running a bunch of CS tournaments, like tier 3, tier 2 tournaments.
Okay.
That's how I ended up meeting most of the players, like Blade, for instance. That's how I got access to Blade. Then we ended up signing him. But basically, so we started doing tournaments. Because in Dota, I couldn't get anything done. Well, in Dota, we had one sponsor, which was a golf company, believe it or not, in Australia. But that was like more because it was like a pet project. Like it was somebody at that company that founded the company that was just a massive Dota fan.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can get lucky like
I
that,
mean,
right?
that's what a lot of it was. Is like just random guy owners who were like, "Hey, esports is kind of cool. I'll just throw money at it. Why not?" You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, right, right. But like real, like tangible money
Yeah.
came in CS in for tournaments. So it started with, believe it or not, betting sponsors, right?
Yeah.
That was like the first at the
Yeah.
time. Then it became like other ancillary ones. So for instance, Zowie for us in 20 end of I say mid 2015, 2016, 2017 was probably one of the biggest partners. But what people didn't realize was I was running, well, me and Dana at the time. So basically, FlipSide
Mhm.
was running. So look, if I say I mean FlipSide, basically, obviously. But still, I was running, obviously, major part of um, Zowie's expansion into CS because of my relationship with them in Dota,
Mhm.
CS, fighting games, Street Fighter, and
Mhm.
Rocket League. As a matter of fact, the only reason Rocket League and the FGC saw better monitors. So, for instance, Rocket League would have never had 240 hertz monitors if it wasn't the flip side, because me
Hmm.
and Cooks here pretty much bitched at Zowie for almost a year before they finally just like acquiesced. Then I set up a meeting between Psionics at the time. There was the owner was Dave
Mhm.
of Psionics, Dave and Zowie, because all of our players kept complaining about. Um, so we upgraded PCs at the team house,
Mhm.
and our players were complaining about screen tearing because we were still on 144 hertz monitors,
Oh yeah.
right? But because most people don't know this, Rocket League is the most performance intensive esport basically because of the
Hmm.
physics engine that's involved in it and just the sheer speed of everything.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Cooks here was complaining the whole time, bro. So finally, we gave him a CS monitor, which was a 240 hertz monitor. That was when the 240 hertz monitors just came out. I mean, our Counter Strike team just got them. And then Cooks here wasn't complaining anymore. And he's like, bro, we need to be playing on this. And I was like, what are you talking about? You need to be playing on this. This is a CS monitor. He's like, it's not a CS monitor. It's just a 240 hertz monitor. It's just. So then he went through the technical, because Cooks here was a wizard for all of this. But
Yeah.
Cooks here is fundamentally the reason why like Psionics is, or like Rocket League players
Yeah.
started playing on 240s and now 360s. And that was basically our worth to Zowie was that it was, we were doing tournaments. Then we brought them the esports acumen to be like, yo, you need to partner with this company and this company and this company and this company. So when it came to getting contracts, it was easy for us because Zowie didn't have the actual esports people that like were A, technical,
Right.
and B, had the foresight to know sort of like where the industry was going.
Yeah.
So
That's really smart because they don't know this. That they don't know that side of it. Like they don't know that
yeah,
a player would notice the difference between 144, 240. Like
yeah, yeah.
that's actually super
So
meaningful.
G Fuel was another big one for us. I mean,
Mhm.
um, we don't have a like I don't have a relationship with them now, but Cliff, the owner of G Fuel, which I mean, I can still call him if I wanted to, but I mean, like I haven't had a working relationship since like
Yeah.
before the pandemic. G Fuel was also humongous for Flipside. I mean, I'd say they were pretty
Mhm.
much our biggest partner because in CS for 2 years they pretty much titled sponsored our CS division,
Wow.
and then creeped their way into fighting games. But yeah, so like we kind of got lucky, but our whole thing was like beyond the team stuff. We basically just ran tournaments and we pretty much did the marketing for some of these companies. So
Right.
the whole Zowie fighting tour, the first 2-3 years of its inception was all us. Um, we were the ones when DreamHack made a foray into the fighting game divisions.
Mhm.
So before they got with Jabali, it was us that was running it.
Hmm.
Yeah, so like that's sort of like how, right? Like it started with like Zowie, and then it became the consumables. Well, sorry, first it was gambling,
Yeah.
then it was Zowie, then it was
I mean
consumables.
that stuff's
But
unavoidable now. Even Riot's getting
yeah,
like kind of interested. Like they got to take money from somewhere, right? So everyone's been
right.
blaming them like, oh, you're taking Saudi money, you're taking gambling money, but like they're taking crypto. Like at some
Yeah,
point, somebody
it's
has to
bad.
pay for something though. And
Right.
unfortunately, the problem in esports, they've never monetized the fan base well, right? So now you can sell some in-game
No.
items. I think they made a killing on skins in Valorant now, but they're still not monetizing the stream. LCS just announced that they are doing subs now for the stream, which is good. I think that's actually a really positive thing. They need to be
Yep.
doing it in Valorant too. You should be able to sub to the official Valorant channel and have proceeds of that go towards the league. But
Fair,
you
yeah.
know,
I
like
mean, I think the biggest fuck up that we had was in esports. So, for instance, in 2019 or 2017, I don't remember, but there was a London major.
mhm,
So I owned a company called Stats Helix, which
mhm,
basically did stats and analytics
mhm.
for CS:GO, which at the time everybody was using. Um, but we did the first. So this was also a way we monetized. Flip side, but this was arguably one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life. But it's okay. Um, you know the Twitch extension program was
Yeah.
basically us at Stats Helix or me, which in turn is Flipside, because at the London major you could basically pay $10 and you could get every POV live of any
Oh
player you
man.
wanted. We did that first. That was the first Twitch extension,
Wow.
and then it was oh my god, what is his name? Emmett Shear, the CEO of Twitch. If you look at the 27, I think it was the 2017 keynote. Literally, in his speech, in the first 5 minutes, they mention Stats Helix, like they mentioned this thing. Fast forward another 3 years when the pandemic hits, the Twitch extension program becomes their biggest like vehicle. And I didn't monetize it. Like I didn't take
Um.
ownership of it. Like we gave them the idea, we wanted to partner with them, we did this thing, and then they basically turned that into their largest like
Wow.
vehicle. And I'm a schmuck and I didn't get a dollar for it. I basically just gave them the keys to the kingdom, right? But but the reason why this is important is because to me this has been the biggest problem with developers in general is things like we did for that major should be standard protocol. Like if you think about it, if you think of like what real sports does,
Mhm.
right? Live updates, live
Right.
stats,
Right.
live this, like that should be standard protocol for every esport, every sport in general, because that's what
Right.
they've done,
Yeah.
right? Like being able to like have all these things and pay for them on your phone. I'm not
I
saying
mean, it's even easier in esports because unlike traditional sports, nobody has to
we have the
measure this
data.
shit. It's already in the
Yes.
game. Like it could be auto
Yeah.
updating into your phone. Like their KDA
Yeah.
is real time updating. You know, like this
Yeah.
stuff is so easy.
So like to me, that's like the lowest hanging fruit that I think
Right.
would have yielded them enough of the big results simply because if you think of Valorant, they're trying what do they end up doing with their client? They ended up creating an in-tournament system for
Hmm.
Premier, right? Which means that they're pushing towards the competitive side of things the most.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a demo replay system.
Which is I lose my mind with that. Like
That's another thing that we can discuss later. So stuff like what I mentioned that CS:GO did at that London major is what should be a huge vehicle driver for them because
yeah.
the people that are playing in Premier will probably like pay for the POVs to watch their most favorite players.
Yeah,
And if you
it's
think of that
dude.
over
It's all
so
about it ends up being like
yeah,
esports has to be content driven. Like you have to have
right.
interaction from pros to fans, all that, etc. Were you at Champs in Korea? Did you see
Hmm.
at the fan show or at the pre-show or whatever? They had two premier teams from Korea that won play a live match at Champs. I was like, dude, how dope would that be? Like to be able to get in a group of
Yeah.
your friends, make it to tier one premier, and like actually get to play at Champs on a
Yeah.
stage. That was sick. And
Yeah.
they need to do that every year. Like every region, if you're in that region and you win your
Yeah.
Premier League, I mean, you should be able to go play at Champs. That's such a cool idea
No,
because that
100% that was cool.
like
Yeah.
it incentivizes the up and coming player base, right? If you're, Immortal Radiant and you're like, dude, like, VCT's coming to my region next year. If I really grind this season and like actually get a team together, we might be able to play a live event. It's not even about going pro. It's just like
Right.
you might get to play on a stage. Like
Right. Right.
that's
No, for
so
sure, for
cool.
sure. Yeah, it's those small things I think that
Yeah.
developers have missed.
Yeah. They need to
But a lot of
definitely
it is because they have a lot of like look at Riot in particular.
yeah.
They have a whole bunch of MBAs. They have that's all they're hiring now. You need an
Yep.
MBA to work there.
Yep.
But what falls by the wayside is you lose the esports acumen
Yeah.
when you start going, oh, the people in esports, they're not sophisticated enough. They're not intelligent enough to work for us.
But then
Like they're not good
the
enough.
problem is now it's very overt when they're over monetizing. You can tell you're like, dude, what is the
Yeah.
skin price right now? Like You're just
Yeah.
ripping people up. The gotcha system they implemented in League is so like hated universally, but people are buying it. So yeah, they're making money, but you're shooting your reputation in the foot every time you do that. Valorant hasn't implemented it fully yet, but they do the random night markets, the random shops, and all that sort of a similar system. It's still better than CS, I think, where you're paying for crates, but it definitely
What I wonder though about that, and this I don't know
yeah.
because I don't know people high enough at Riot that I can get this answer directly. But I wonder if it was really the acquisition by Tencent,
I'm sure
which
that's a big part
had
of it.
them have these
Yeah.
things, right?
I mean,
Because
Tencent
like I
runs
wonder if the
yeah.
NA crew, right? But I wonder if the original founders kept
Yeah.
the company and didn't sell it.
Right.
I wonder if that would have been like if the direction would have been the same.
No, I guarantee it'd be different. Because
Yeah,
League, started out giving out free skins if you just play enough. Like if
right.
you earn essence, you buy your own skins. It's free. You could literally put theoretically you could play League of Legends for free the entire time and unlock every skin in the game.
Yep.
But with Valorant, immediately it was a monetary model, and then they implemented the gotcha system into League directly because I think Tencent was like, you need to start making money on this, like similar to every mobile game. Like if there's a battle pass that comes out, you get X number of tokens. If you roll for this one
Yeah.
chibi, like you
Mobile
might get
games are
it.
bad too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
It's just
guaranteed to get it after 300
the
rolls. It's like it's crazy.
yeah. The thing that bothers me about that is um without getting introspective and socio-political about this, developers know that young people are the ones that are playing their games.
Yeah.
And they also know how detrimental and how also easy it can be to extract money
Hmm.
from young people.
I mean,
But then they tell you that they care about the youth
yeah,
and they, want the best for the players in the community. But at the same time, they're kind of turning them into degenerate gamblers.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
kind of
See, that's
crazy.
what I think. I think Valorant has a nice mix of it where
Yeah.
if you have a randomized market, there's already incentive to buy a skin if you see it because you're like, oh shoot, I might never see this again, or at least for like a month or a year.
Hmm.
So if you see the skin, you're like, oh, I'm gonna put money, I'm gonna buy the skin. I've been wanting the Prime Vandal for like my girlfriend was waiting for Prime Vandal for like 6 months. When she finally got it, she immediately bought it, because it's like you might
Right,
never
right,
see it
right.
again. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that because there's a chance of randomness, you're incentivizing, but you have a
Oh,
choice,
I'm
right?
okay with
Yeah.
that too. It's the crates and
Yeah, that stuff
it's
that's straight up gambling. Like you're just rolling, you're
yeah,
just playing
yeah.
slots and you're hoping for the best. I'm
No,
totally
right,
against
right.
that.
And we
Yeah.
brought up mobile. Mobile, I think, is the biggest criminal of this. It
Yeah.
is insane,
Yeah.
you know.
But I mean,
But yeah,
I do think Valorant's skin system is pretty good right now. I mean, I've only played consistently for like the last like year, like 6 months to a year, and I've already dropped like $500, which is crazy, But it's like
I mean, some of those skins are cool.
I know,
Some of
but the
those
thing
skins
is,
are
they gave
cool.
me like the greatest skin shop lines. Like I was getting like 3 skins a shop sometimes. I was like, dude, I want all 3 of these. Or like, and
Hmm.
then the Radiant Knight thing pisses me off, but that's a whole nother thing where you have to like pay
Yeah.
more money to even use the skin.
Uh huh.
But it's smart. I get it. It's still not as bad as Gotcha. But yeah, we digress.
Right.
I mean, I actually really enjoy that you have a lot of insight into the business side of it because that's something I don't get to talk a lot about with
Because I
people.
had to do
And
everything, bro. I
yeah,
nickel and dime the fuck out of
it's
esports.
super interesting
I
to me.
had to.
Like I was a business owner previously. I sold my business. I was a private PT practice owner. Esports was always a side project for me, but being a small business owner, watching how orgs were run, I was like, how are you guys operating like this when you have a budget of millions? And you're never ever even close to getting in the black. Like you're burning money. It makes no sense. When they're
Yeah,
when
it's
when they're pulling in almost zero revenue and they're building a $100 million facility, like that it's insane to me. Like, how are you doing this? It has to come from someone somewhere at some point. Like, there's no way to maintain that.
right.
Um,
No,
but yeah,
facts.
I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, going from obviously the big spend, mentality of North America and all that, even somewhat in Europe, even like in terms of ECT, going to Pacific now, where it's sort of a different model. From what I understand, like Pacific is much more building up, right? So they're always trying to build sustainable businesses first, and then try to like find the best talent for the lowest price. Like, what's your
Yeah.
impression been going to Pacific?
So it's. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I would say specifically to answer your question about them doing the opposite of NA. I've been genuinely impressed by how Pacific teams not only monetize, but just how they think about sustainability. So, for instance, at Talon, I have a GM named Dohoon who I think does a really good job. Like, he's really good at, I think, one, cultivating talent, right? Well, scouting and then cultivating talent, which I think is also a big part of this industry. Two, fiscally responsible. At times, very cheap, right?
Sure.
I have no problem saying that, but that's part of being fiscally responsible, right? Like, now that I'm on this side, I don't want you to be cheap.
Right. Yeah. It's like,
But I did it on F3, so I know, like,
yeah.
I get it, right? So, funny enough, I had this conversation with him like 2 weeks ago about this.
Like, what do you mean you can't get Korean barbecue again? Like,
Right,
like,
basically,
we just won,
right?
man.
Like, yeah,
Let's
exactly.
get dinner.
So, and then I think the third thing was that, like I did, they go to these places, like for instance, Talon, Thailand, where the dollar stretches a lot further because the social economics play into your favor. So the minimum wage in VCT, I believe, is like 4,000. It's like $35 to $4,000 USD. That's the minimum, but that's still like 5 times average salary in Thailand.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, the reason why conversation is important is simply because the amount of time it'll take for players to start getting agitated about their salary is a lot longer. Where in NA, even if you're paying somebody $10,000 a month, they have a few good tournaments.
Yeah. Yeah. They're gonna be like, all
You
right,
got to double, triple because they're gonna leave the next contract to somebody else, and you know it, and it's just.
Yep.
So you don't have as bad of a problem in APAC with that. That's not to say that players don't want to get paid; they do.
Right.
But it's not a pressing issue.
But also relative to like what they could make in a year, right? Doing a job, you're also incentivizing a whole larger group of people to get good at the game in order to go pro. Whereas in NA, it's like if you can consistently hit top 10 on the ladder, you might just be a streamer.
Right.
You make more money doing that. Like,
yeah, for sure.
So it's really hard when you're like, okay, you can go pro and we'll pay you, let's say 200K a year, right? To be a tier 1 pro. 200K a year for a rookie is pretty good. You might actually just be better off doing content if you actually cared about the money. Like,
that is what I'm learning is for some of these Valorant guys, it is crazy.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, like, I don't blame tens. Like,
right.
Like, what does he have to lose? Like,
right. So it's not the same in other regions. So for instance, like even Premi.
Yeah.
Because I have like the hottest young guy in Valorant.
Yeah.
And even he can't monetize his stream. It's not the same.
Not at home. No.
Not at home. No.
Yeah.
So like if he were to come to NA maybe on NA time, because that's another problem is in order for them, because I mean it's like this in the world. America's the marketing capital of the world.
Right.
So most of our money, so as a country, when it comes to marketing dollars, we spend the most typically.
Yep.
Right? Whether it's luxury brands or necessities or whatever, it does not matter. So if you're like a kid from Thailand, like Premi, if Premi wants to make the most money he can, he should be streaming on NA hours.
Yeah.
Even if he's in Asia, right? That's what he should be doing. But he can't do that because NA hours are hours he needs to sleep because we practice. So it's like they have to choose. Whereas in America, you're lucky because you can sometimes do both. That doesn't mean it's easy, and that doesn't mean it's optimal, but sometimes you can do both. And I think Tens and F and S went the other way. Tens decided like, I have personal stuff I want to do, his relationship with Kaide, right? Like, because that's a thing about this life that people don't also understand is the amount of time that we have to put into this. Like the example I gave with Premi, that takes away from your personal life.
Yeah.
right? You know,
I was
family,
I was having this
girlfriends, all that
conversation
shit.
with like someone
So
else on my stream the other day where it's like most esports players don't retire actually because of an injury or because they're washed up. They just
yeah,
get tired of it. They're just like,
right.
I can't put in the 12, 14 hours a day anymore. Like I want to have friends. I want to go out. I'm almost 30, like
Yeah,
I gotta live my life.
right.
Yeah.
So and yeah, so that I think is in some ways you're right about the fact that like if they really just cared about money, they should just stream.
Yeah.
And it's just so true because I have a kid that is kind of like I don't want to say he's going through that now. He's not really going through that, but I think he's beginning to realize
Mhm.
now.
No, the real move should be for anyone from that region. You get good enough to get seen and known. You get signed to an NA team. They pay for your
Yeah,
visa. Then you come here and you stream on your time. Like
yeah, for sure. And
that's
then
a
you
win.
play. Yeah,
That's a win.
right.
But
100%.
yeah.
So
Um.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's super interesting. Like, what's it been like with I guess coaching these players? Like, how is it integrating into your system? Like, obviously they play sort of a different style of Valorant, and like probably aren't used to working with American coaches, stuff like that. Have you had any
No.
issues?
Yeah, tons. I so we talked about this on Spike Talks. You had like
Yeah.
all the guys there, and basically it's just like, yeah, it was hard at first because I also came in to Talon with not the best attitude or approach because I've been in esports a long time, and especially in Valorant over the years, without getting too intricate into this, because this is not what you're asking, but I just got tired of the bullshit, and I definitely got tired of being disrespected.
Mhm.
So I came to Talon, and Talon was basically the last like opportunity I had in Tier 1. So right there, I'm already pissed because I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, okay, this is the game you're playing. So I come into Talon with this energy where this is my last shot. So I'm gonna make sure that I go out on my sword,
Mhm.
right? So that automatically put me on. I'm doing shit my way. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. I'm going down with the ship,
Mhm.
which obviously that attitude is way different than what Cruz probably was expecting, and especially most of the Thai players.
Mhm.
So obviously, I would say the first 4 months was a real big fucking, you know, come to Jesus
Yeah.
moment for everybody. Over time, though, it got easier and easier and easier and easier. And I think once the players started to realize the results, because I think in kickoff,
Yeah.
we played DRX and we almost beat them. And we should have, and I could get into some of that other shit, but,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
they had
developmental.
help.
Yeah.
No, 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 no. They had help, which
You
if
had
you
some
know where I'm going
scouting
with
or
this,
like
no, 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 no. They had help, which is a big
okay.
scandal in Valorant. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Some stuff got
uh,
leaked or
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that going on in Asia, by the way.
You know
But
what? That's actually
it's
culturally a
fucked.
thing.
Oh, I know it happens in league all the time too.
Yeah. Like we
It's fucked.
I've taught I mean, I worked with, NA teams going to worlds, and that was a major problem. They're like, look, the Chinese teams and the Korean teams are literally sharing scrim VODs with each other so
Yeah,
that
it's
NA
it's
teams can't
fucked.
beat them. Like,
It's fucked.
yeah.
And it is so much work, bro. Like Riot has so much. Anyways, they have so much evidence because I have evidence because
Yeah.
people basically like. Let's just say that I was very fortunate, and some people liked me enough to tell me the truth.
Mhm.
Right. So I have like amount of evidence that I gave to Riot, but it is what it is. But anyways, but when we almost beat them, Stacks goes on Twitter and he's basically like, "That was one of the hardest matches I've had. Holy fuck!" Like what the? Like he actually says that. He basically says, "GG Talon, that was one of the hardest matches I ever had. What the fuck?" Basically, right? That moment was really good, I think, for my relationship with Cruz because
Yeah.
I think at that moment he realized, oh, okay, because he had never come close to beating DRX before. So for him, it was like, wait a minute,
You're making improvement.
right?
It's going in the right direction. Yeah.
So, and then I think from that moment, every week to week, the relationship got much better. And now it's like, obviously, it's like not even, this is like, you know, it's almost like none of this stuff happened now, right?
Right.
But I'd say about the time we after the season 1 playoffs. I say from that point on, everybody was locked into each other. There was no more, I think, reservation.
Mhm.
Everybody was like, whatever the fuck it's going to take to win, that's what I'll do. Our team became very selfless at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it started really rough
I
because of all
mean,
the reasons I mentioned, and then it just got better. And by the end of season 1 playoffs, bro, it's been
I think for
smooth sailing.
any team to run the comps and the play styles that you do though, right? Like it's antithesis to how they normally play the game. So a lot of it
Yeah,
you have to buy in. You have to be selfless to be like, hey, you want to put me on stage. I'm a duelist. Like, yeah, run it. Like you want me
yeah,
to play this agent. All right.
yeah.
So they just have to buy in and trust you. Like, cause I've seen, like through the grapevine and through word of mouth, other people, there's a reason why a lot of the top tier NA teams kind of fell apart too. Like there's a lot of internal like, hey, I don't want to do that. Like pushback
Oh,
against
trust
coaching.
me.
Like
Oh, I know.
it's bad. There's a lot of
I
ego.
know.
Like, it's always been like
Way
that.
too much ego for
Yeah.
people. You know, I look. I'm gonna be a dick here, but I'm gonna try to be as respectful as possible for people that haven't done shit, bro.
Yeah.
That's the thing that drove me
Yeah.
probably the most insane. Is I have in multiple games world championships, so I have like multiple world titles.
Mm-hmm.
Coming into Valorant, it was like none of that mattered,
Right.
and I'm thinking, brother, this game is Dota. What are we talking about?
I love that. I love that
Like,
comparison you made on Spike Talk too about how these are agents with abilities. They all do
yeah,
different things and they synergize with each other. You can use them in ways that people aren't thinking about. Like,
yeah.
like,
But Valorant players, I don't know what the fuck it is, but I have no problem saying this. Valorant players have been the most stubborn gamers I
yeah,
think I've ever been around in my entire life, and that spawns all these different games.
yeah,
And I don't know why. And for me, it was lucky because Baby Bay
yeah,
came from Crossfire, went to Overwatch, went to Valorant, and has known CS people, and he's co-signed that. So for me, it was good because I felt like I was like crazy. I felt like I was that old guy that was just like,
I will say the league community is probably very similar. So I'm wondering if it's a Riot issue, like a Riot Games issue, like a lot of like people who play because league pros are the first to say my coaches don't know anything they're talking about, and I know
yeah,
better because they can't hit the same rank as me. And that's just such an insane
yeah,
concept when you look at sports, right? Like,
yeah,
like
right,
what are you talking about?
yeah.
Like they're coaches for a reason, and they should know what they're talking about, or they should, the org should let them go. But at some level, you're not going to have success in an org or with a team unless you have player buy-in to the coach's philosophy. Like the
No,
coaches,
that's true. That's
like
certainly
you
true. Yeah.
can't play,
I mean, unless the players are doing everything themselves, then you don't need
but then
coaches.
you don't
Then
need
you
a
get what
coach.
half the league is. Half the league is cheerleaders.
Right. Oh
Half
yeah.
the
I
coaches in the
mean,
league are friends
well,
or
okay. Well,
cheerleaders. Yeah. So
I had a question written down. I was gonna say, who do you
yeah,
admire?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. But
let's flip that. Who do you think?
what?
Who are the frauds? Like, like.
Oh, trust me, I could name a bunch, but it's just interesting that seems to in NA from my experience
Yeah.
that seems to be what people want the most. People don't want to be coached,
Right.
or people don't want help. They just want somebody to basically deal with management in the org,
Mm-hmm.
like limit the amount of content and all the other responsibilities that they have,
Right.
right? And they'll figure the rest out, basically. And if it goes all wrong, you're going to basically be the first one whose neck is
Yeah.
chopped off
Yeah.
by
You
the
got to take the
guillotine.
blame.
You got to take the bullet,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much what they want. For me, I came into Valorant wanting to win a world championship, and I already know what game I'm going to compete in next. I'm here for titles. I
So
don't give a
I
fuck about
mean,
anything else.
if I was an org owner, that's what I wanted my coach. And you have to enable the coach to have that environment in which players are bought in. If you, it's like of the traditional sports, I probably know football the best, right? I watch a lot of professional
Right.
football, American football. The Patriots organization had the dynasty they had because when players go to the Patriots, they understand what's about to happen. You don't
Right.
get a say. Like you can
Right.
give your feedback, you can say your piece. The coach is going to
Yeah.
make the decision at the end of the day. And you either do it and you do it well, or you get cut.
Yeah.
Those
And
are
Bill
your
Belichick
options.
was also the GM, so he's the one you're
Yeah.
negotiating with.
You
Yeah.
you know exactly who you're
In
bringing
North
in.
America, that's
Like,
not how it is. As a
no.
matter of fact, it's the exact opposite. The players have the most control
Yep.
in in North America.
I've heard
But in
that talk.
Asia,
Yeah.
it's the exact opposite.
But that's also why I think I don't know about China, but I had a talk with Data, from T1 at the
Yeah, yeah,
beginning
yeah.
of preseason, and he was telling me that you are going to see Korea and China within the next 2 years take over VCT. And I was like, oh, that's a bold claim. I think that's pretty a hot take. And then we saw it. Gen G was
Yeah.
destroying people.
Everybody. Yeah.
Like China won champs, like in their
Yeah.
first year pro. Like, and he's like, it's just you have no idea the resources that are being put into this. And
Whoa, that's
and the infrastructure they have because they're actually developing players. They're not
Trust me.
hiring the best players,
Yes.
putting them on a team, and then just letting them run.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
he's
Yes.
like, we are focused on scouting and developing players.
Yes, and
Like,
that is something North America would not do. I begged for an academy team.
I was gonna
early
ask
in
if you guys were doing anything academy system or
No. In Talon, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying
Okay,
when I
okay.
was in North America,
Oh.
I begged and I couldn't get it.
I've
They
been
were not
It's so
If-
insane to me that there's not any sort of involvement. Even you don't even have to know academy team.
Because
Partner
they're
with a
spending-
tier 2 org. And have
because
them
they're
feed it,
spending
like,
they're spending too much. The reason is these fucking idiots are spending too much money on the main teams.
yeah.
That then they don't want to spend more money on the other teams.
Which
the problem with this logic is
Yeah.
they're not even getting the results anyway.
And the thing is, it actually saves you money because if you
It
have
does.
a team that you can then promote a player out of, you don't have to hire a superstar for 3 times the budget.
Right.
Like, it's so
Right, bro.
insane.
Don't, bro.
Oh, man.
You don't even know the Pandora's box you're opening because I could eviscerate one org that is, I guess, the people's org
Yeah.
like this
Yeah.
because of all the insights I have on the inside about this conversation.
I mean,
But yeah,
I literally,
that's the difference.
I mean, I was talking to a GM. I mean, I'll even say because I was talking to Cloud9, right? And I was working with Cloud9, and I was telling him like, how are you cutting your academy league team, and how are you not putting any sort of resources in a tier 2 for Valorant? You realize what you're doing now. You're gutting your ability to actually recruit or build anyone up. You are going to have to pay out the ass to stay on top of this league.
Yeah.
Like that's what they're trying to do, or they're trying to find random players in solo queue and just dropping
Like
into
they
a team.
did this.
And
Look,
they do. They
what
have
did
a
they
good-
do this year? They put
I think they have good
a rag of
scouting.
misfits.
Yeah, they have
Sure,
Oxy. You've
but-
hit a diamond, but you have nothing around him. Like
Right. They have Oxy. So what do? They put an OG
yeah,
in Zeppa to
Yeah.
be on the team, right? So he's retained. Then they got a player in Rossi that came out of T1.
Mhm.
T1 didn't have a good year, but they're just throwing darts at the dartboard,
Yeah.
hoping he's our IGL of the future, right? But it's like, okay. And then when it doesn't work, guess what we get when it doesn't work, guess what we get to do? We get to like wait, you signed a guy that had a 2.9 record in APAC, and you brought him to your now the second guest.
yeah.
But if it hits like in a bottle, they're geniuses.
Yeah.
But the truth is, they built the roster
Right.
out of necessity based on what they felt was the best available options.
Yeah.
They didn't have internally a path.
That's what I've always said about
For the future.
that org. The way they do things is they put together
Yeah.
the best possible players, and they don't think about the best possible team. It's always been
Right.
like, hey, we need a mid laner, we need a top laner. These are the 2 best in those positions. Let's just put them together. We need an
Right.
IGL. Hey, who's the best free agent IGL right now? And it's like
Right.
you could have maybe even kept Vanity. Like you already had him signed.
Yeah.
Give him a year to develop that team. Like,
Esports doesn't understand chemistry well.
no,
Gamers don't understand chemistry.
not at all. Oh,
they
man.
don't know.
The-
They don't know what's special when they have it.
the
They don't
amount
even.
of arguments I've gotten into
they
when
don't even
people are
understand.
like I actually, so I think Jogamo was going to do well to G2, but I was very skeptical when they said they were dropping Icy. I was like, you just changed the dynamic of this team.
Right.
Their strength was
Yeah.
how they played together. Like,
Right.
I mean that I don't know, because people were
Oh yeah,
calling-
that makes a lot of sense.
people
Yeah.
were calling for like, oh, put Ye on the team. That'll get him a champion. I'm like, you don't know anything about Ye, and you don't know anything about how these players play together. Like,
Right.
you can't just plug and play like that.
Yeah, we
you know?
We didn't make roster changes.
Yeah.
I could have. Everyone's yelling at me to do it. We
No.
didn't make roster
No, I
changes
love
because
that.
of the fact that chemistry matters and we have a good group.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, just from
Yeah,
what you said,
that
the
matters.
players bought in. You can't replace that. Like that is so rare to find where you're going to find a group
Yeah.
of 5 players who are actually bought in and willing to sacrifice to make the team work. Usually, I mean, you look at like superstar players when things kind of rough, they don't have any loyalty to this.
No.
Like Osbos at Lev, like, he had 1 year there. He didn't
and
actually.
he was an owner. They gave him ownership.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, they gave him ownership. It's yeah.
That's
So yeah,
that's crazy.
that's even crazier.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
actually even crazier.
you can't do that. You literally can't do that. You look at any pro sports,
Listen, bro.
the second you give ownership, you've compromised any rationale or any reason for them to even play hungry. Like they're not
Yeah,
hungry. You give
yeah,
you give someone who is starving food. Now all of a sudden they're not starving. They're not going to play the same. Like your
yeah.
spot is
The
safe. Like
incentive. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's a very difficult dynamic
Yeah.
when a player has that much power because it. I mean, I don't want to speak in the left stuff too, but that team didn't fuck with each other for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's like, when the dynamics are different, it's supposed to be the players against the org, the players against management.
To some degree,
That's
yeah. But
like that's kind of how you want it. That's how you need it. You
yeah.
need the players to look at themselves as a group, as
Right.
one,
Right. It's us against
right?
everyone else. Like
Right.
yeah.
So, and the moment you start creating those dynamics internally,
Yeah. I mean that's
it's
been a problem with a lot of superstar rosters and teams where
it's a ticking time
if
bomb.
especially when people know that someone's getting paid more and you know that they're
Yeah.
paid significantly more than you and then they underperform, you're like, "What the fuck, man? Like, why are we paying you?"
Fair. Fair.
Like
Fair. I mean, so I have a different stance on that because I think gamers are eventually going to have to get over this
I
because,
agree, I agree. This is like superstar sports in any game where
yeah,
you got Cristiano Ronaldo on your team, you know he's getting paid more than you
yeah,
gotta show up, like
yeah. But gamers are, at least on the Valorant side, the
yeah,
game is so young and people are so young that I understand why that
yeah.
is. Because you're actually right about that affecting people. Because I've been
Mhm,
on a team where
mhm,
that happened.
mhm.
So I know this does happen.
Yeah.
But I do believe we need to mature them and educate them. And
Well,
basically, like where I'm from, you don't pocket watch,
yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
congratulations, you get to
You
do
got
what you got to
yours.
do.
You got yours.
Bro,
I'm still getting paid. Yeah, who cares?
if
Like
that's the case, I should be throwing on Spike Talk. I should be fucking throwing smoke every week because there are coaches making like 3 times what I make.
Yeah,
You've
yeah.
never heard me once criticize them because at the end of the day, you are basically what the market tells you
Right.
you
All right. Well,
are.
so
If
so
you can find somebody to pay you X, you deserve it, right? Who
exactly.
the fuck am I?
Exactly. You're
So,
just jealous. You're a hater if you're talking about their money, but
right.
yeah.
So when players do that, it actually bothers me, but I
Right.
can understand
It's a human thing.
why. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also an age thing because I think if
Sure.
you're older, you should be mature. You can be mature enough to
Well, I mean,
understand that this is just how things
obviously,
work.
this is an aged human. Like, it's a personality thing where you see like players who haven't even made it to tier one, shit talking tier one players, as if that's ever going to get you onto a team like online.
Oh yeah,
Like
that's
you can't be on Twitter bashing tier one players like because you shit on them in a solo queue game, and
yeah,
and ever
yeah.
expect to get signed.
Behavior is tough. Everyone has to be edgy.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
crazy. It's. I mean, but that's this isn't Valorant specific. This is society
sure,
specific
sure,
because we've we have slept on social media and what the effects are
yeah.
and sort of what So
Well, I mean,
it's
it's
tough.
yeah, it's a, you're right. It's a larger scale social issue, really.